labels. I put the labels under, I don't know who is recording this. Is it Carol?
I think it is.
It's me. It's Petronilla. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Petronilla, keep eye on the waiting room.
Okay.
Just admit all. Click admit all, not one by one. Yeah. Okay. We keep going. So the second part will be what I call one. Let us understand the terms and labels I put within inverted commas. Okay. And so then possible biological basis for LGBT reality. Because if there is a strong biological base, then the freedom of individuals is limited. That means we need to withhold judgment, but I'm exploring that possibility. Finally, the most important part as far as our presentation is concerned is the psychospiritual challenges and responses to persons identifying as LGBTQI. And I would like you to pay attention to the terminology, the phrases I use, so you can constantly see that I'm talking about people here. I'm talking about persons here, not just labels. Okay, so opening remarks. So the first thing I like to say is we need to take an approach of understanding the reality before we make judgment. And it's true of any reality. How would you make judgment on a reality without understanding what is happening? And interestingly, a lot of people are repulsion towards these labels, probably coming from a cultural perspective, from a religious perspective, religion that is assumed to be revealed. Okay, so and all that. All right. So when I advertised this webinar first time, somebody wrote me an email on that day. Stop. Okay, they said, do what you must, but do not rub it in our faces. Okay, I have just copied it verbatim. Okay, and just to let you know how the person just email. Okay, now what does this show? What does this simply show? A repulsion and an assumption that my presentation is like politicking, lobbying. Okay, and people may be reacting against that lobbying that is going on. But I like to once again make clarification that I want to take an approach of understanding. Okay, so that is a key point. So what is it about understanding? I have my perspective about morality, about people, about revealed truths, about cultural traditions, and there is someone here who is outside that frame. But there is one way that I can expect in understanding this person is that they come into my perspective. But I can also take a perspective of, let me enlarge this perspective and see if I can dialogue with them. I'm talking about any type of understanding between individuals, understanding between teachers and students when there's a conflict, understanding between couples in marriage, understanding between parents and children across. So that is how I understand the meaning of understanding. That, yes, I want to enter into a conversation with this person. That means I need to make an effort to expand my perspective rather than expecting them to come into my perspective. Now, if that is the case, and if I don't do that, then I'm talking to myself and I'm not talking to others.
1 minute.
Yeah. So
I think there's someone who needs to mute. Father Selvam, if you could also give me co-host rights so that I am.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So that is my understanding of understanding. Okay. Second point, people. Okay. Psychospiritual understanding of people in the LGBTQI community. People. I want to insist on the word people. Okay. So people label themselves in different categories. I label myself as an Indian, as a priest, as a Catholic, as a professor. Those are labels. And people label themselves as gay, straight, lesbian, bisexual, whatever. But beneath all this, they are human beings. And that is my invitation by this career. I mean, I'm taking a risk to make this presentation. And that why I want to take that risk, because I want to recognize human faces behind or around these labels that others have thrown on them or they themselves have taken on. Now, what that means is, why do I insist? Let us suppose life is an all-you-can-eat buffet, and we are functioning in this life with all the possibilities that it offers. Okay? Or even if this plate is about defining who I am, my identity, how much does sexuality and gender occupy? Does it occupy the whole plate? So if I just reject someone because of the label that has been assumed on them, then what I'm assuming is that I am attributing the whole label to the whole person, that label. So LGBTQI is about gender and sex, sexual identity, sexual orientation. We are going to talk about it. And if I just reject someone because of that label, that means I'm making a mistake of mistaking their whole identity around their sex and gender identities. And that's not fair. My second remark, there is a whole sort of rhetoric that these things are modern, these things are Western. Okay, fair enough. Are they? Okay, are they? So if you say it's modern, probably you're looking at things anachronistically without being sensitive to history. Okay, we know, for example, let me talk about my own culture. In India, transgender people have been identified, and they have been even attributed with some divine characteristics. Yeah, if you travel in South India, you will see them coming to the trains. Okay, you can't miss it. Transgender. You can see these images from Egyptian paintings. So is it modern? I'm not claiming it is not modern. I'm not claiming that. I'm just raising a question whether we are looking at these things in a very narrow-minded way. Are these things Western? Are these things Western? Now, I'm sure many of you are Catholic. Many of you come from Catholic background here. Okay. Now, you go and look at the history of Ugandan martyrs. All right. Look at this detail. Mwanga Kabaka became increasingly enraged as the pages, for example, Kizito among them, continually refused and rebuffed Mwanga's sexual advances. Okay, yeah. So Yes, and this is 19th century. All right. You might say, oh, he was already westernized. Okay, you can argue that case. But in any case, this Ugandan king had homosexual tendencies. Okay. So, but what is new? I think the new is the exaggeration of the individual liberties and polarized politics around human rights. Those are new, definitely. The whole rhetoric around human rights is modern phenomenon. So people who have been in these minority groups are beginning to assert their rights. And because the media is picking up these discussions, it is becoming like widespread stuff. And so it might encourage people in the periphery to try and to assert themselves in these categories. Okay, this is so media is playing a role. Definitely, there is a whole political agenda around these things, definitely, which is coming from human rights and individual liberties. Yes, let's talk about that. Okay, and I'm not going there in today's presentation, but that could be modern. So one fact around that is, uh, according to this study of 2017, uh, younger people tend to assert themselves more in these categories. It may not be that they are, I mean, the number of LGBT people belonging to this LGBT group are increasing. I'm not too sure. But people are asserting themselves more openly. That definitely is. And their media is playing a role, political lobbying is playing a role, and all that. So this statistic shows that younger people are more likely to assert themselves. Finally, we must always remember when we make a moral judgment on somebody, we need to see how internally free they are, how much freedom they have to choose a particular action. Okay, yeah, because praise and blame can be attributed to certain behavior only if that individual is free enough to choose to act in that way. Okay, I don't want to go into the philosophy, the whole philosophy around uh, ethics of these things. Okay, but it's good to remember this. Now, let us understand terms and labels, starting with sex and gender. I think this is a common thing. Most of us know it, but I just want to put ourselves on a common platform. Sex refers to physical aspects, biological and physiological differences between people. Uh, Gender refers to social and cultural differences. Okay? And so this point is an important thing. Sex might remain same regardless of culture and time. Okay, it can be debated. Gender roles might differ. Time here meaning not in the life cycle of an individual, but time in terms of history. Okay, yeah. As history goes, yeah, gender roles could be redefined, and it has happened in our own lifetime. Cultures also, between cultures, there could be differences. Sex is created by reproduction needs, that is biological features. Gender is social norms, okay? Yeah, so basically that is it. Now, what do you understand by these terms? Okay, can we chat? Can we chat? And Carol, can you read out for me the chat box? If there is any other comment that is worth commenting right now, you could read that out. And if people are trying to define these terms, you could also read that out.
Okay, so
Dr. Carol, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Father Selvam. So far, so good. What I am seeing here are more questions. I want to believe that these questions will be answered as you continue with the conversation. Rose Mwangi is asking, what is the LGBTQ plus agenda and history of the community as people? Phyllis says, you are right, Father, the human behind the labels is a beautiful approach. Yes, because here you are very clear that it's about understanding. Rose is asking, how would one present this topic to Christians? Francis is asking why they are heavily funded with strong advocacy from donors, yet they are not freely welcome in our society, and gives a Bible verse there about heterosexual relationship. What is the theological base of LGBTQ? Father Selvam, that's from Rose Mwangi. And Anaya, if there's no sound on your phone, I think maybe you may need to leave and come back. Phyllis, so now we are getting to the answer. Sexual orientation is a preference. So let's have
Carol, before you go there, let
Yes.
me say something about some of those questions which I may not answer. For example, funding. Yeah, there could be funding, just as there is funding for different areas of human rights, because the funders see this as a human right issue. Okay, you and I, coming from a religious background, might look at it as a moral issue, but there are individuals and organizations that look at it as human rights issue. Therefore, just as there is funding for climate change, there is funding for women's rights, there is funding for child rights, there is funding for I don't know, rights of people, deforestation and all that, preventing deforestation. There is funding for animal rights. Okay, there's so much of funding for animal orphanage in Kenya. Wildlife, there's so much of funding. So why are we not questioning that if we are questioning the funding? And these are people, okay. So they're funding it because they see it as, in my perspective, they see it as a human rights issue, okay? And that's what I said is a new reality, because there is an awakening since especially the middle of the 20th century, an awakening globally about human rights issues, especially of minority groups, across minority groups, whether it is women, it is people who are physically challenged, it is children, it is youth, it is people who have mental health issues. It is taken as a human rights perspective. People who don't have access to education, okay? So we have woken up that with the declaration of Bill of Rights, and the UN and all that. Yeah, so that I think it comes from that perspective. Okay, and now let's go to the definitions. The other questions that I have not commented on might come up when I present. Yeah, very quickly, Carol.
Right.
Definitions. Yeah, thank you.
We have two answers here. Sexual orientation is a preference. That is from Phyllis. And Gure says, gender identity, how I view or perceive my gender in view of acceptable cultural norms and values. Another one, sexual identity is a self-perception. Stella says, sexual orientation refers to the attitude and behaviors that a person has in sexual relationships. So the last two are from Andenyi and the other one is from Stella.
Great. We go ahead. So as I have said in my previous slides, sex refers to the physical, anatomy issues and physiological issues, okay? Now, gender refers to the cultural roles around gender. Okay, I don't know how else we can say that. It was traditionally assumed that gender roles are directly derivatives of sex, one's sex. But more and more, in terms of even asserting women's rights, we have already got an insight that gender roles may not be universal and stable over a period of time. Okay, so that is where these gender issues are coming in. All right. So sexual orientation is how an individual is physically getting attracted to a person, whether of the same sex or different sex or both the sex. Okay. So if you're getting angry when I'm saying all this, please hold on. Do a mindfulness exercise. This is the meaning of sexual orientation. Sexual identity is how one's sex is identified in terms of physical features, primary features, sexual features, and secondary physical features, sex features. So to make it plain, primary are like your sexual organs, one's sexual organs. And secondary are like secondary characteristics are further developments that happen during puberty. For example, hair growth, enlargement of hip, breast development. Those are now secondary characteristics. Now, they can get enmeshed. They can get enmeshed, okay? The primary and the secondary. Okay, so we are going to look at that a little bit. When I say enmeshed means they may not be very clear in some people, because now, is it natural? Nature is full of anomalies. Nature is full of exceptions also. Okay, yeah, it is the human mind that likes to see order in nature. All right, yeah. Now, gender identity is a person's personal sense of one's own gender. Now, so this is a basic sort of a definition. Then we'll look at the details. So what does L stand for in this LGBTQI category? L stands for lesbian, a woman who is emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to other women. Gay, often used to refer to men, but can also be used as an umbrella term for individuals of any gender or any sex who are attracted to people of same gender or same sex. Okay, now here and there I'll bring sort of stories, cases, which I use pseudonyms, but also sometimes I put from my own interaction in counseling context, group therapy context, or group support context, cases that I'm putting together. Okay, let's take the story of Frank. Now, Frank, he says, when I was in upper primary, okay, that's like grade 7, okay, grade 6, grade 5, my male friends, okay, used to talk about girls. I could not just relate to it. I was not attracted to girls at all. I was actually attracted to boys. Of course, I felt guilty about it. I was confused. I wondered what is wrong with me. I couldn't tell anyone. Will they understand? I only told God. Okay, this is a strong believer. He comes from a very traditional Christian background. I only told God, why did you create me this way? When I did disclose to my dad about my condition, that was when I was studying law now in the university, hell broke loose. Now, is this guy making it up? Now, if you hear stories like this repeatedly, or all of them making it up, making up this story. So what is happening here? Okay. Now, bisexual. So we are continuing to explore LGB. Now we are in B. B stands for bisexual. An individual who is emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to both men and women, or both sexes or gender. Bisexual. Now consider the case of Jane. Case of Jane. During Christmas, when we went up country to Shosho's place, now for those of you who are not Kenyans, Shosho means grandmother. Okay, it is originally from Kikuyu, but now most ethnic communities in Kenya are using it. So, okay, it has a Kenyan background, this story, because in Kenya, what happens is, you know, people in Nairobi, they have a house in Nairobi, but their home in their village where they come from. I'm explaining that for the sake of non-Kenyans here. And I know there are several of them here, including Europeans here. So what happens during Christmas, to some extent Easter, is the families who are living in Nairobi go, we call upcountry, to the villages, okay? And the whole extended family sort of comes together to celebrate Christmas and sometimes Easter. And if you go to churches during Christmas itself in Nairobi, churches can be empty, literally. Okay, fine. Now, that's a background to that. So when people go, of course, cousins sleep together in the same room, perhaps on the same bed. So she says, Jane says, the girls had a room and boys had their own. Once, when I was like 8 years old, I was sharing bed with my older cousin, female. One night, she started touching me in my private parts. In the beginning, it was sort of funny. I was like shy, but it was enjoyable. We kept repeating it whenever opportunity arose. It was our little secret. Now I'm married. I enjoy sexual relationship with my husband, but also with my female cousin. Now, you would call it bisexual. But you can see the difference between this case of Jane and what was the name of the other guy? I forgot, Frank, okay? You can see the trajectory. They're different. They are different. I would like you guys to be sensitive to that. In the case of Frank, it seems from childhood, Frank was attracted to boys. But in the case of Jane, she's attracted to both, but there is also something of introduction, something. It could be an abuse case, but it has escalated into a sort of an orientation, okay? So these are the dynamics around this. These are the dynamics. I'm not saying all bisexuals are like Jane. I'm just bringing a case. And I'm not saying all gay people, people who are gay, are like Frank case, okay? Yeah. Now, what about transgender and transsex? I like to be subtle about this in terms of making that subtle difference, meaning I think there is transgender which is different from transsex, though sometimes literature puts them together. So transgender is a person whose gender identity does not align with the gender they were assigned at birth. Okay, it seems an internal process that I don't feel like a boy. Now, it sounds strange if you have not gone through it. It sounds strange to me as well. But I want to understand this. Okay, is it real? It is so. Now, transsex is a person whose secondary sexual characteristics change during puberty or later. Is it possible? Okay, there are medical people here. I know Dr. Alphonse, my friend, is here. Maybe he can talk about that. But I can give you a real life experience that I had of this 35-year-old. Maybe he was younger than 35. Okay, I'm just, he could have been in his early 30s. I see him in training, okay? It was a residential training. I don't want to give more details. because these are individuals with human faces. And okay, I noticed, okay, it was a cold place. He was wearing a jacket. He was a bit, I thought he's obese. Okay. So then I guessed he has enlarged hips. He's a male person, enlarged hips. So I didn't, from a psychology background, and I observe people a lot. So I just left it like that. And then he comes to see me, and he comes with this story. A few months ago, I had a small fall and broke my hand. When I was taken for treatment, somehow the doctor confirmed my fears. Okay. Maybe medical people can explain that better. I think when there is a hormonal confusion in terms of the sex hormones, even bones become brittle. Okay. And so I had been observing in me some secondary feminine characteristics, breasts and enlarged hips. Okay. And I thought I was becoming obese. Okay. I have started now. So the doctor said, no, this is a hormonal problem, actually. So I have started hormone treatment. Okay, he can afford to do that. It is agonizing for a vowed celibate like me. Now, the reason is he is given male hormones, so he is sexually aroused. Okay. Yeah. Now, Q for cure, an umbrella term that can encompass a range of sexual orientations, gender identities that are not exclusively heterosexual or cisgender. Okay, that is like. Now, intersex, I for intersex, refers to individuals whose physical or biological characteristics do not fit typical definition of male or female. Intersex people may have differences in sex hormone or chromosomes, hormones, and reproductive anatomy. Okay, I would like to play a small video. I will not play the whole video, and as the video is playing, Carol, you can give me a feedback if the sound is clear. Okay, and you can. This is a real story, and okay, it might sound vulgar. I'm sorry. I hope all of you are adults. Is the sound all right? Is the sound all right? Did you hear the sound?
Yes, we can hear the
Okay.
sound.
Okay, sorry.
I have a vagina. Just thought you should know. That might not come as a surprise to some of you. I look like a woman, dressed like one, I guess. The thing is, I also have balls. And it does take a lot of nerve to come up here and talk to you about my genitalia. Just a little. But I'm not talking about bravery or courage. I mean, literally. I have balls. Right here. Right where a lot of you have ovaries. I'm not male or female. I'm intersex. Most people assume that you're biologically either a man or a woman, but it's actually a lot more complex than that. There's so many ways somebody could be intersex, and in my case it means I was born with XY chromosomes, which you probably know as male chromosomes, and I was born with a vagina and balls inside my body. I don't respond to testosterone, so during puberty I grew breasts, but I never got acne or body hair, body oil. You can be jealous of that. But even though I don't actually have a uterus, I was born without one, so I don't menstruate, I can't have biological children. We put people in boxes based on their genitalia. Before a baby's even born, we ask whether it's a boy or a girl, as if it actually matters. As if you're going to be less excited about having a baby if it doesn't have the genitals you wanted. As if what's between...
Okay, So now, is it modern? So we talk about intersex, I for intersex. I hope you heard the video and you get a sense of what this intersex means. Now, when we say this, all this LGBTQI, everything is modern, is being intersex modern? I don't think so. It's only that contemporary medicine, contemporary medical facility has the advantage of seeing what is inside us simply by ultrasound, for example. Simply. Yeah. So traditionally, this woman in a traditional society would be termed barren. That is it. Okay. She might get married, she might get divorced, I don't know. But today, when she goes for ultrasound by chance, then it is found what is inside her. She has testicles inside. Now, is she responsible for that? Who is responsible for that? Now, faced with such a person in front of you, in a therapeutic context, in a confession context, in a counseling context, do you have anything more to say? And this person is asking, why did God create me like this? So when we condemn all that, is not this person getting rejected as well? Because we are not making the nuances. We are not being alert to the nuances because we didn't just want to hear about it. Okay, so that is my concern as a pastor and as a scientist. Okay, yeah. So now this plus is for the whole category. All right. So taking on from that biological thing.
Do you want to take some questions?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Conversations are ongoing. So some are comments. So let me just read them. Francis says, how would you handle a parent who approaches you for advice when they come to you for advice if their child confesses to have joined LGBTQI+? Bahati says, I believe there is something important that Frank did not say. I don't know do you want to answer one at a time, or maybe I can.
So now parents, about supporting parents, maybe we can come back to that. Okay.
Okay.
But Frank, I'm not. Okay, that I mean, that type of a question assumes that we cannot trust Frank, right? Now, if as a parent, as a pastor, as a counselor, as a psychological practitioner, as many of you are, if I don't start with a position of trust, will this person even open up to me? Okay. I'm not too sure what he's hiding. I don't know. I would start with the point of trust. Okay, yeah.
Let me finish. I had not completed. I believe there is something important that Frank did not say. I believe for him to have felt that way, there must have been stemmed from it. They must have stemmed from something. It could be an adult female exposed a private part when he was at a very tender age, or he was sexually abused by men. At least this is what I strongly believe. And this kind of belief didn't come from nowhere. It came from my experience as a counselor of 15 years.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. In fact, I brought the two cases of Frank and Jane just to contrast. Okay, so yes, I could end up asking, well, did you have any situation of abuse or exposure? And if that is ruled out, what if that is ruled out? Okay, yeah. So I will leave it there for your consideration. I would remain in a balanced state myself. Yeah. Okay. About that case. Yeah. Okay.
Rose is asking, what do you think about the influence of the hormones in the case of Frank? Could it be his white matter is more in his gray matter in the brain.
Yeah. Okay, so that is what we are going to cover in the biological basis. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And how
Yeah.
can you know that a person is in this community when he or she doesn't confess? And then
Yeah.
Bahati is asking, what do you mean by confessing? Just answer the first one. This other one, I think, is
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I use the word confess there. Okay, maybe I meant confession in terms of the Catholic practice of confession. Okay, that is where you are bound by utmost secrecy, not even confidentiality. So that's what I meant when I use the word confession. I think that's the only context in which I've used the word confession so far. But the otherwise, it could be coming out open, to the parent, to an adult that they trust. Yeah.
And that's what it like that. That's what Phyllis responds here and says the correct expression to use is coming out when they disclose their identity. Francis is asking, where do people who have undergone sex change surgery, man to woman, or vice versa, fall?
Yeah, they are transsex or transgender. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then Patricia would like you to repeat what Q stands for.
Yeah.
Queer.
Q is queer. That is strange. It literally means strange. So it's an umbrella term, as I said, that refers to every category. Okay. Yeah. And it's interesting that people in this community use it. And that's very, very interesting as well, whether they literally understand it or not. Yeah. It's just an umbrella term to refer to the so-called rainbow. Yeah.
Okay. Leah asks if hermaphrodites are intersex.
Yes, it's possible. Or trans-sex. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Then okay. I'll take 2 more and then you can proceed.
Yeah.
In Olympics, some athletes have been disqualified because of gender ambiguity, such as the South African Semenya.
Yeah.
She identifies as female in Olympics, yet she got married to a woman. Please explain her case, because I think it's partly biological.
Yeah. Yeah. So probably these biological questions could be answered as we come on. Huh? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And Phyllis said she sees them she's totally neutral and she sees them for who they are. I'm going to stop there because I'm sure they will keep coming. Then we will start from where we stopped. Proceed.
Great. Thanks. Yeah. So possible biological basis of LGBT reality. Okay. What are the possible biological factors in these conditions? There could be genetic factor. There could be hormonal factor. There could be brain structure differences, epigenetics. Okay, I'm going to explain each of that. And variations in sex chromosomes. Okay, I'm not a biologist. I'm not a medical person. But I think in psychology, we also need to take into consideration some of the biological factors, just as we do that any psychology course entails neurological systems. Yeah. So neurobiology. A psychologist should know neurobiology. And then now we know when we talk about in psychology, genes also play, is an important topic. Okay. So I'm coming from that perspective rather than from a medical biology perspective. Okay, so my knowledge about these things could be limited. Okay, so with that disclaimer, what we could mean by genetic factors. In general, when they say this personality has a strong genetic influence, even personality, extroversion, for example, we know extroversion, introversion has a strong genetic factor. How do we know? It is by twin studies, especially twins who are separated at birth. They become samples for a lot of research, medical, psychological, And so when twins who are separated at birth begin to show certain behavior or develop medical conditions at the same time, then we can attribute it to genes. Then, of course, more controlled trials are done in terms of really now studying the DNA structure and all that. Yeah. In terms of LGBTQ reality, some studies, some twin studies suggest some genetic factors. Okay, I want to qualify that some. No conclusive results so far. No specific gene identified. Okay, yeah. So the research is still ongoing. And ethically, we say, when in case of doubt, withhold your judgment. Withhold your judgment. Okay, and take a safer course. So, as science is developing around this, I would not enter into another Galileo problem. Okay, yeah, let science take its own course. Second, hormonal factors. Hormonal influences during fetal development might be a possible factor in sexual orientation and gender identity in adult life. Okay. Now, again, exact mechanisms are not well understood. Ongoing research. Okay. Now, you might say, hey, is it modern? Researchers are modern. Okay. Researchers are modern. Because, science is developing. Yeah. What about brain structure? Again, scientists claim or scientists suggest that there may be differences in brain structure and function between individuals of different sexual orientation. I don't want to go into that, whatever somebody said about gray matter, white matter, and all that. But there may be differences in brain structure. However, more research is needed. Now, epigenetics. Epigenetics is relatively a new field in biology, science, as well as in psychology. Now, epigenetics involves changes in gene expression in response to environment without changes to the underlying DNA sequence or DNA structure. Now, if you want to, I'm not a biologist to go into the details, and we don't have the time, even if this is one of my favorite topics, because even like personality and even character seems some correlation to epigenetics. Okay, so that's where my interest in epigenetics is in terms of character. Yeah, but here in terms of the LGBT or people in the sexual minority groups, there could be a genetic expression in response to a particular environment. So what that means is that the epigenetics is that DNA structure is not changed. So that DNA is not passed on to the next generation, as it is a case in evolution, okay? And inherited congenital conditions. Now, epigenetics might play a role in sexual orientation, okay? And epigenetics is contributed by environmental factors, exposure to chemicals, emotional states, stress, diet, even in previous generations, okay? Yeah, so this could be modern, even this phenomenon, whatever, this dimension could be modern in that the environment is changing, okay? Environment is changing. So some of these could be response to the environment, okay? And now, how, if that is a spontaneous genetic expression in response to a certain environment, can you really condemn the individual? Yeah. Now, variation in sex chromosomes, especially in intersex. People who are male have XY chromosomes, people who are females have XX chromosomes. Now, I'm sure you studied this. I studied this in grade 10 in India, okay? about sex chromosomes. Maybe it was late at that time, but maybe these days they are learning even earlier. I don't know whether you remember your own school lessons. Yeah, people who are intersex may have a mix of chromosomes such as XSY, okay? Or they may have some cells that are XY and some cells that are XS, especially stem cells, okay? Yeah, all right. So these are now some of the biological factors. I'm sure medical people who are listening to me here, I don't know how many marks you give me for that. I may not be I'm not an expert, huh? But as a psychologist and as a pastor, whatever background you're from, as a parent, I think we need to take into consideration the biological factors. But as I've said, biological factors would would withhold or influence our withholding of judgment because the freedom might be limited. On the other hand, the biological factors emerging from researchers are still tentative. Okay, yeah, I hope that is a fair comment. Any questions, Carol, so far, as we go to the last part of our presentation?
Okay. Let me see. Rose says, is gayism not a style that goes against the mutual order of human beings to marry people of opposite gender for procreation? What is it, the marriage of gays? I don't know if that is clear.
Yeah.
And then
okay, can I comment on that?
Sure.
Yeah, I previously made a comment during my presentation about nature. And I think this person has used the word order. Yeah, nature is full of exceptions. And nature also keeps adapting. Nature is evolving. And if it is about progeny, okay, to give you a very vulgar sort of a feedback, to fertilize a whole harem, you just need one male, let's say, living being in that harem. Okay, yeah, okay, let's go on.
Okay, then Paul says Q also stands for questioning.
Yeah.
And Susan says, where would a male person born without tastes and cannot have sexual relationship as a man fall?
Yeah, I'm not too sure of that. It could be a lack of hormones. There is a psychological term for that. Maybe psychologists can help me with that. It's a lack of sexual libido, right? Yeah, and yes, I don't think these categories are talking about that. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Then Josephine says she's learning a lot. I am learning a lot too, Father Selvam. This is
Okay.
an place for me.
Yeah.
Francis says, now that gayism is rampant, what's your take on couple getting a child by IVF?
Yeah, now those are moral issues about IVF and even gay marriage. And I think, this is not the forum for that. Okay, so the title of my presentation is Psychospiritual Understanding. Okay, Psychospiritual Understanding. Now, spirituality is not theology. Spirituality is not exactly morality. Okay, and spirituality may be even outside religion. Okay, so that's from that space and we cannot solve all the problems here. And some of the problems that we might discuss in an open forum, in a in-person session, we cannot discuss in a webinar. Okay, so I would like to withhold some of those comments. Okay, yeah, because they are very nuanced. But I can tell you my position regarding, I wouldn't like to change the definition of marriage or family. Okay, yeah, that I would stand by that. Okay, yeah, even if there are people of different sexual orientation here or whatever want to throw stones at me, I think there is no justification for change of the definition of marriage. Okay, yeah, because then there are some basic fundamental things that might be lost, and then we don't have any framework to work with. Yeah, so even family, yeah, I wouldn't change the definition of family because it is at the core of the social nature of human beings. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All right.
It's something on the Freudian concept of psychosexual stages in relation to LGBTQ.
Okay, because I have a PhD in psychology, and my own readings and studies tell me that Freudian psychology, a lot of theories of Freudian psychology is discredited by empirical evidence. Okay, it's insightful. Freudian psychology is very insightful, sometimes helpful, sometimes may not have a scientific base. Okay, and I come from a very strong empirical background, and so okay, I have not explored that because I'm not into that space. Yeah.
Okay, I think I'll let you finish up and then we can come back to these questions. They're still coming. Or would you like to take one or two more?
Yeah, or we can take one or two more. Time is not so bad. We should end by 7. Okay. Yeah.
Chris asks, where are the asexuals in this group, those who do not have any feeling or for sex at all? And let me combine it with the next one from Veronica. I have been working with an intersex and they tell me that they are asexual. Is it normal for all to be asexual, or it depends with each individual?
Yeah. So there was another comment about lack of libido. Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, I suppose part of that could be treated. Part of it, if it is a biological condition, I suppose we can only support them to manage that condition. And you see, simply, we assume now there was one term, normal. Okay, normal. If I'm from psychological perspective, we prefer to use the word functional than normal, because normal is difficult to define. Okay, yeah, what is normal, especially in terms of behavior, in terms of even biology, and we can only say majority of the population have this sort of thing, which that type of a discourse, that type of a language allows people, with due respect to the minority groups. Yeah, so we need to be a little bit more sensitive to use the word normal, you know. Yeah, there's a lot of variation in reality. There's a lot of variation. Yeah, it is about variation, accepting variations. If we want to look at everything in either or category, maybe we lose out a lot of stuff and a lot of people get missed out. Yeah, I think so. We need to be careful about that term normal. I'm not saying that there are common aspects. Yeah, there are common aspects, but common aspects don't become normal. Yeah. They are very complex realities that we are talking about, and nature is very complex. Nature is very complex. Look at the trees around you, the trees of the same species. Yeah, even the banana you eat, now and then you have a different type of banana of the same tree. Yeah, so all that, yeah. So can we, I mean, I think the whole presentation and the aim of my presentation is a little more respect. I'm not saying we should politic these things in terms of like justifying. We are not justifying it, but can we listen? Can we respect these human beings and understand what's happening? Yeah, that's the point. Huh? Yeah, so asexual may not fall into this category because it might be a temporary thing. It could be attached to certain categories of these groups of people. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think DSM-5 has some categories of that, what we are referring to. Yeah. But DSM does not include these categories, okay, because they are not to be in the new sort of discourse. They are not to be seen as disorders. Okay. Okay.
All right. What does it say about Kenya being staunchly Christian, yet not following Jesus' words on loving your neighbor?
Okay. Okay.
Like
Yeah,
that.
you see them. It's interesting. I don't know if I really understand that. I don't know whether I'm interpreting it in the right way, but yeah, Bible can be interpreted this way and that way. Yes. Okay. Mm.
One final one. Well, Phyllis says that intersex is the term that's currently used, and in response to another question. And then Eda says it's not advisable to use the terminology of the sexual revolution ideologues. It's better to say person with same-sex attraction than labels like gay, lesbian, homosexual. We ought not to say transgender because it's impossible for a woman to become a man or vice versa, no matter what surgery or hormones are administered. Also, sex is not assigned at birth, it is merely recognized. Neither should we call ourselves cisgender or heterosexual. We are human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting comment about labels. Yeah. And politics are around the labels. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
The final one, Rose asks, could it be gay and lesbian couples are afraid to take the challenge of parenting responsibilities?
Yeah. Yeah. I can see. But on the other hand, if you say they are not taking the parenting responsibility, they want to adopt. So would you agree with that? Okay, I wouldn't agree with that myself.
Okay.
Same-sex couples adopting a child. Who are you to determine the freedom of the child to be belonging to such a family? Yeah, so that would be my argument in adoption cases. Yeah, but I don't. So if you talk about the parenting instinct or responsibility, then it's a dangerous topic, in my opinion, because you might end up encouraging adoption, which would have its own implication on the child who is adopted. Already adoption in, in any family has its issues. Children who are adopted come up with the issues across. So now already if the family is a different type of a family, whether it will fit into that definition of family at all, then it becomes an issue. And who are you to determine? It's the same like I remember in the 90s, it used to be a very interesting thing. I've been in Kenya since 1992. And when I was younger, I used to go to schools to give weekend retreats for girls and boys, girls boarding schools. The other day I met somebody who had attended some of this retreat. And then girls would say in the 90s, this was in the early 90s, 93, 94, in Kenya, the girls would say, no, I don't want to get married, but I don't mind having a child. So I used to challenge that. Who are you to choose for the child that this child would not have a father? So it is the same that we can talk about adoption. Yeah. As far as a child is concerned, I think nature should take its own course. Yeah. And then when we find the child in our family, none of us make choices about our families. So if you're a believer, you see a divine plan there. But if you're not a believer, it happens by chance. But that's where you find yourself. And I think as an adult, one of the processes in terms of maturity is acceptance of that reality, right? Now, if that has been complicated by the parents, then you see, it is not fair to the child. Yeah.
Okay. There's someone who is reminding you to respond to the Semenya question. I think it was about whether it's partly biological. Lucy, do you want me to repeat the question, Father Selvam?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Maybe I didn't hear it or I didn't understand it. Yeah.
In Olympic.
It's possible that I didn't understand.
Okay.
Ah, yeah.
In Olympics.
Okay. See, yes, I remember that. Olympics goes by hormone test. Okay, so if your female hormone is not strong enough, you are not allowed to compete among the female category. Okay, because the competition currently is between male and female, and so there has to be some sort of determinants to that, just as they do urine tests to check if you're on drugs or not. Okay, so all that, yeah, I think that is a reality under which that person has been asked not to compete among women. I think so, yeah. So, okay. But
All right.
yet he could be married if his spouse, the person's spouse accepts that. That is a different thing. Yeah, that is all right. That is between them. Yeah, but in an event that is competitive, there has to be some sort of a criteria. Yeah. Okay.
Hope that question has been answered. Share more in relationship to the biblical teaching.
Yeah. Now, I want to tell you that I'm not going to the biblical because not all people here may be Christians. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I think there's a response here. Semenya has very high levels of testosterone, higher than is regular for females. She is also gay.
Okay. Whatever.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that.
All right. Yeah. Then my worry remains, if LGBTQ is to be understood psychospiritually, what would it mean for the community now that information can get to even to the teens at the point of exploration?
Yeah, I understand that difficulty. There is, any sex education, especially if it is not age appropriate, could lead to exploration. But it is not fair to withhold information because of that. I suppose sex education has to be age appropriate, has to be contextualized. Okay, I think even this information, all this has to be contextualized and age appropriate, in my opinion. Yeah. It is not fair to expose someone earlier than what they might be. And of course, when I say age, sometimes people also mature at people of same age also mature differently. So yeah, that's why we are saying parents should get more involved in this rather than schools. We shouldn't relegate this duty to the government and all that. Yeah, so those are interesting topics to discuss further. Yeah, I keep that space open for that. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll let you finish up and then we can come back to questions. Thank you.
Yeah. This section may be brief, but I think this is a climax of our presentation. Let's understand first psychosocial and the psychospiritual challenges of people in these categories. First is identity question. And people do say, okay, I feel trapped in the wrong body. Especially people who have had, whose this sort of identity is very strong. And this is a very sincere question. Now, if you doubt their sincerity, then even any counseling is not possible. And so, it's a phrase we hear. I feel trapped in the wrong body. Then rejection. So because people are asserting this more and more, and as I said, the media could be contributing to increase assertion of this and experimentation, yeah, possibly. There is also rejection by family, society, religion. Yeah, rejection. And that rejection comes with stigma and discrimination. And whenever there is stigma and discrimination around a group of people, human rights people jump on that. And I think that is what is happening. Yeah. So these human rights people want to protect these minority groups from stigma. Yeah. You might remember in our own lifetime, since the early 90s and 2000, the whole thing around people with living with HIV. Yeah, the stigma around that. And so, and such is that. And speaking from a mental health perspective, people in these categories tend to experience high level of anxiety and depression, even with suicidal ideations. Now, while this is going on, it could be aggravated by rejection, aggravated by stigma. Therefore, the double tragedy is in seeking help. They don't seek help. They're going through depression, but don't seek help because of the fear of stigma. They don't want to come open with their status. Whether it is through abuse, whether it is through nature, whatever. Stigma of sexual orientation, identity, and stigma of mental health condition. So already people who are having mental health issues, there is stigma around it. Now there is a double tragedy, double stigma that this person is of a different sexual orientation or identity. So there's a lot of high level of suicides among this group of people. Mental health. So that becomes another issue for human rights people to open up the possibility that they can seek help. Yeah. So then economic questions. If somebody, we are talking about transgender, transsex, and intersex. Okay. Transsex, for example, they need medical treatment. Okay, even if you don't go into the transgender issue, like that person I mentioned who has developed secondary sexual characteristics, and now they need medical treatment. Now, if they are from economically challenged background, there is an economic question around that. Then the second thing, my dear friends, this is a reality in Nairobi, cities like Nairobi, Mombasa. Mombasa tourism could contribute to it. Dar es Salaam, there's a lot of boy prostitution. Okay, along the coast of East Africa. I don't want to go into the details of that. But in Nairobi, there are individuals who are running away from home because of these categories, okay? They end up in the cities. Definitely birds of the same feather flock together. They get recruited by some of these people. There's a whole lot of online prostitution that's going on, okay? I mean, advertising. And these guys from the villages get sexually exploited. Now, who is at fault? I'm not saying, I don't know, I don't know, but I'm just saying there's a reality. So they're caught between what they say, what do you call that phrase? That you're running away, but you end up in a more miserable situations because of the stigma around these things. Now, spiritual question. This is going to be one of my last slides, and I'll go slow with this. Spiritual questions. Feeling of rejected by a loving God because of being rejected by religion, being rejected by the family, rejection by God, feeling of guilt, definitely. Just as there is a whole issue around identity, you know, even if this person politically states, oh, human rights, but there are internal processes that are going on. And looked at from a spiritual perspective, there's definitely guilt. There could be guilt in many of them. And then if there was some tendency to say this is more, this in a particular case, it was more natural. I'm not saying in all cases, then the question can be, why did God create me this way? Or even if it is an outcome of abuse, why did God allow it to happen? Okay, these are real questions. If somebody is a believer, or even if this person believes in a higher power, why this higher power was not in control? Or from an African perspective, traditional cultural perspective, curse. Is my family cursed? Especially if there are two cases in the same family. The whole rhetoric around curse. Okay, so these are now the spiritual questions. And if you take them seriously, they are very deep questions, in my opinion. Okay. You might want to defend the Bible or Quran or Holy Book, but you might end up betraying God. So those are my dilemmas, even as a pastor. Those are my dilemmas. If I keep quoting the Bible, without consideration to its historical, cultural developments, is this person going to reject God because of my own repetitions? Okay. And people say, oh, now Kenyan context, coming back to Kenyan context. This particular slide that you are seeing on the screen, I prepared this slide about 5-6 years ago. And already there are a lot of groups that were working with these groups of community. So it is not really something that now the court judgment and all that, it is not influenced by that. Okay, so these are some of the groups that I'm aware of, but I'm definitely sure there's a whole lot of other groups. Okay, now some of these groups are not necessarily fighting politically for rights. They may not be demonstrating on the streets, but they might be offering psychosocial support, medical support. Okay, yeah. So that is so it is there in Kenya, whether you like it or not. Okay, these groups do exist. There might be many others. Okay, yeah. So it is not a new reality in terms of this registration businesses. Okay, yeah. So with that, I finish my presentation. Now let's take some more questions. Over to you, Carol, Dr. Carol.
Thank you very much, Father Selvam. A very bold presentation to be able to venture in this area that is very, very thorny. And I think for me, my biggest takeout is that this is you giving us a psychological perspective and a spiritual understanding, just so that we may have more information. And with more information, then we tend to make more informed choices in how we are interacting. That is my takeout. So thank you very much. Let me read what Eda says here. I know there are conversations before there that were more answered, more of a conversation amongst ourselves, but let me take this one from Eda. In transgender ideology, even the word gender originated from a criminal psychologist called John Money, who was a sex pervert that abused his clients sexually, resulting in the suicide of an entire family. His experiments on gender as a social construct were a complete failure. He failed to confess his atrocities and lie before his death, and even the gender reassignment department of Johns Hopkins was closed, only to be revived decades after as a cash cow, destroying, mutilating, and sterilizing the human race, destroying individuals and families, therefore destroys humanity. And then Rose had asked if sex is determined at birth, and Eda is saying sex is determined by the creator at conception. Any comment, Father Selvam?
We might want to cross-check these details, and yeah, but whatever the background of the term gender, I think it's a reality that we need to face today. Yeah.
Okay. Bahati says, I believe gay are troubled by deeply seated childhood trauma, and what they need is help. I'm very disturbed by their strong urge to sexualize on children.
I might say not in all cases of childhood trauma. Yeah. So it is, I don't think I would generalize like that. Yeah. Okay. In terms of understanding the reality. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Agnes says, a Christian lesbian approached me and asked me why God created her in that way if it was unnatural. I guess this is just part of the that you are saying, spiritual questions. Eh?
Yeah.
Bahati, abuse are made by human out of choice, and we all have free will. Francis says,
let me comment on that comment. True, in many of our situations that we are victims of other people's choices. Okay, but if I'm a victim of other people's choices, how free am I? Okay, I hope it is not too philosophical. Yeah. So is the victim, even if it is an abuse, okay, the victim and the perpetrator, are they all both free at the same level? And does the victim need condemnation or support and defense? Yeah. Okay. So let's become a little more nuanced in looking at the gray areas of reality around us. Yeah. Because if we come from this black and white binary polarity categories, there are a whole lot of stuff that doesn't fit in. I don't want to be a Republican or a Democrat. I like to remain in center.
neutral.
Yes, I don't want to be categorized as left or right. In fact, when I lived in London for 4 years, and then even in the Catholic Church, there is this left and right priests, and I don't know. And people used to wonder, well, Selvam, where do you fall? Because I used to read London Times and Independent. And they said, somebody told me, if you're a rightist person, you shouldn't read Independent because it's a leftist newspaper. You see, these categories really put me off. Yeah, so I like to remain in the center to see the gray areas. And even if I may not have all the tools to see all the gray areas, but I would hold myself in that space. Yeah.
Are LGBTQIA+, welcome to the Catholic faith from spiritual perspective?
Yes, I like that question. Since I'm a Catholic priest, I would say this is where we need to not, we could condemn the action, but not the person. First point. Secondly, the pastoral approach could be different from moral approach. Okay, so we may not water down moral principles, basic moral principles, which are not culturally influenced. But even that's, let us say, a thief. Let us take a thief. Let us not take about LGBTQ. Let's take a thief. The thief also needs pastoral support. Yeah. So, for example, I'm a Don Bosco priest, and Don Bosco is inspired by another Catholic priest in Turin, Cafasso, Joseph Cafasso. He accompanied prisoners up to the point of the gallows. Now, that's a pastoral approach. Does that pastoral support to a murderer justify murder? Okay, so by just rejecting murder, I'm giving a harmless example in this case. Should I reject a murderer? And here, it is not even so clear as murder and not a murder. Okay, yeah, the jury is still out. So, and of course, even if it's a murder, if somebody killed, even in that legal thing, there is a whole variety of killing. Yeah, yeah. I don't want to go into that. So you see, this is a I think behind that question there is that invitation that the church, I think churches, not only Catholic, churches, religion has to consider support of people, okay, even if you want to reject the behavior.
Yeah. There are some who are giving multiple comments, so allow me to read from those that I haven't read from at all. Philip says, thank you for being so open-minded and neutral in this matter. This opens the space for them to get the psychospiritual support they need. Lucy says the challenges of rejection, stigma, etc. are heartbreaking. Understanding and acceptance is essential. The question or challenge now is the imposed choice to live chaste or celibate as an LGBTQ in order to live within spiritual or religious expectations. Any comments?
I think they're very interesting comments. Huh? Yeah. So yes, let's go on. Yeah, we have run. We are going beyond the time. Yeah.
And several people are asking about the slides. This one is being recorded live on Facebook. So just come to our Facebook page, Positive Psychology Association of Kenya, and you'll be able to get the recording at any time.
And even future webinars, you can have access to future webinars, past webinars on Facebook. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Then Dr. Churu says, well done, Father Selvam. Very intense work, highly simplified for our consumption, highly appreciated. We need to keep this conversation alive in well-curated settings such as this. Bravo, Positive Psychology. Sweeping it under the carpet sets our communities up for further abuse, stigma, and fear-based decisions. and quite a bit of thanks. Thanks, Father Selvam, powerful, insightful. You can scroll and read as we go. I want to see if there is any that is really, I think several of them is the same people who are asking different questions. So I was giving it other people opportunity to be heard because it's already way past 7 o'clock. I think I will just ask if you have any final comments and anything.
Yeah. There was one question from Catherine. My eyes are falling on that. How does homophobia affect us spiritually? No? Let me end with that. You know, even if you come from a Bible perspective, do not judge, and you will not be judged. But whatever religious background you're from, the moment certain judgments we make, so homophobia is not just a judgment of behavior, it is a judgment of people and rejection of people and stigmatization. And are you taking the place of God? Are you taking the place of God in all this? And who is your God, by the way? There are people from Spiritual Accompaniment Association, Spiritual Directors Association of Kenya, and I'm sure several people have joined from that type of ministry that they do in spiritual accompaniment. One of the things that we talk about in spiritual accompaniment is, what's your image of God? Is your God that traffic policeman who wants to, in our East African context, who wants you to make mistake, catch you on the wrong foot? Or is your coach a referee? Or is your God a referee who blows his whistle? Or is your God a coach who accompanies you to the playground, of life? So I would like to end with that image of God. Who is your God? Who is your God? And are you trying to save God instead of allowing God to save you? Are you acting the savior? So sometimes I get an impression when people become very emotionally worked up because of religion, whatever that argument is, whether it is about scripture, it is about revealed truths. I say, am I acting God here? Am I trying to save God at the expense of anything, even to the detriment of demeaning people? And in the past, and as it happens, people kill because of this. And does it justify in the name of God and in the name of religion, in the name of morality? So those are, for me, a very serious sort of questions. Is it just to God itself? Okay, yeah. Thank you, Carol. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'll just read what Monira says. Indeed, information is powerful. Excellent presentation. Thank you very much, Father Selvam. Do you have something to say about character coaches training?
Yeah, I'm trying to project that slide. Okay, I had many advertisements in the beginning. So, sorry. I think, sorry. So, Positive Psychology Association of Kenya was founded in 2020, and we run several programs, not only for members, but they're open. For members, we give reduced prices whenever we run programs. We run online webinars on different areas of positive psychology. We have hosted conferences or summits on well-being. We also network with people who want their staff to be trained in well-being. Okay, that is our space. Okay, and character coaches is one of our programs. We have developed manuals, and we offer this training of trainers who go and form character clubs in churches, church context, in street context, in families, in schools, wherever they are. And it's an additional skill for life coaches, so-called life coaches. Yeah. So we have already trained over 170 people as character coaches. So we are trying to create a new profession out of it. And this series that we are offering is also in collaboration with Don Bosco Youth Ministry. So there are two programs coming up. It's the same program repeated, option 1, option 2, 14th of August. Now, if you are interested, contact the email down or positivepsychologykenya@gmail. positivepsychologykenya@gmail. Okay? Yeah. One word. Positive Psychology Kenya is one word. Yeah. Yes, Carol.
The link is also in the chat I have put to the Google form to be able to register.
Okay, great. And if you are IT savvy, you can scan the QR code. Okay. Yeah. Right now. And you can register as well. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please check out for more of our programs. We also have a Positive Psychology Part 2 on our course, 5 days of online course, on an online session on positive lifelong development, but that one is happening in September. So please look out for communication about that. Thank you very much, Father Selvam. It has been a very informative session, and I believe it has been for all of us. Very thought-provoking. Let's continue this conversation moving forward. Thank you for staying in. We had a really good crowd, very engaging. We really, really thank you for honoring her.
And I am aware that even if you saw one login here, there are groups of people also listening. So I greet all of them. I know that there are a group of priests who are listening to this presentation from Muranga, who are school chaplains. So wish you all the best. And I hear Dr. Churu, our colleague, is there right now. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. All right. Thank you all for representing in different areas. Thank you. And Nancy is listening from the USA. Okay, thank you, everyone. You can turn on your mic and say Asante. You can put your Asante in there, your video in the next 30 seconds. We are going to.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, Father.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you, Father. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nice.
Bye.
Everyone. Thank you, Father.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. But prayers.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you. But prayers.
Bye-bye. I'm not, I hope you're seeing.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
and end the
Okay.
recording.
Okay. Carol, are you in a position to end the session? My mouse got stuck.
You're the host.